I've worked the night shift in the same office building for almost a year. For nearly 12 months, nothing unusual had ever happened. People loved telling ghost stories about the place. Some claimed the building had been constructed over the city's old morgue. One coworker swore she saw someone standing at the end of the hallway after closing. Another refused to step into the basement alone after dark. I never believed any of it. Old buildings make noise. Pipes knock. Floors creak. Lights flicker. When you're alone long enough, your mind starts connecting dots that aren't really there. Besides, if anything strange was actually happening in that building, I figured I would have been the first person to experience it. I was wrong, because one night, at exactly 11:47 p.m., the motion sensor at the bottom of the main stairwell suddenly chimed. There was just one problem. Less than 2 minutes earlier, I had finished checking every office, every restroom, every hallway. The front entrance was locked. The parking lot was completely empty. And I knew, without a single doubt, I was the only person left inside that building. Working the night shift was usually uneventful. For almost a year, every shift followed the same routine. A little before 11 each night, I'd make one final walk through the building before settling in at my desk. I started at the front entrance, making sure the doors were locked. Then I'd walk every hallway, checking each office one by one. If anyone happened to be working late, I'd wait until they left before continuing. Next came the conference rooms, then the restrooms. Finally, I'd stop at the front windows and look out across the parking lot. That night, everything was exactly as it should have been. Every office was empty. Every conference room was dark. Every restroom was empty. Outside, my car was the only vehicle left in the parking lot. I stood there for a moment, looking out into the darkness before locking the entrance behind me. There was no other way anyone could have entered the building without me noticing. Satisfied that my rounds were finished, I walked back to my office, sat down, and opened an email I'd been putting off all evening. I had barely read the first sentence. Beep. The motion sensor at the bottom of the main stairwell had just detected someone. At first, I wasn't worried. I honestly thought the motion sensor had glitched. Old buildings have old wiring, and sensors fail all the time. Still, I wasn't about to ignore it. I got up from my desk and walked toward the stairwell. The hallway was empty. I checked the landing above me. Nothing. I walked down to the front entrance. The door was still locked. Just to be certain, I stepped outside and looked across the parking lot. My car was the only vehicle there. No headlights. No movement. No one. I went back inside and quickly checked the nearest offices and restrooms one last time. Exactly what I expected. Empty. By then, I was convinced the sensor had simply malfunctioned. So I returned to my office, sat down, and tried to get back to work. That's when everything changed. The building went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The ventilation system stopped humming. The fluorescent lights stopped buzzing. The usual creaks and clicks of the old building simply disappeared. It was as if someone had muted the entire place. I sat there, staring at my computer screen. Then, without hearing a single sound, every instinct in my body told me the exact same thing. Someone was standing behind me. Not a feeling, not a guess, a certainty. Close enough that if I pushed my chair back, I would have run straight into them. I wanted to turn around. Every part of me wanted to. But something deep inside kept telling me, don't. I have no idea how long I sat there. Every muscle in my body was locked in place. I kept staring at my computer screen, afraid that the second I turned around, I'd find someone standing only inches away. I listened for footsteps, for breathing, for even the slightest sound. Nothing. Just that overwhelming certainty that I wasn't alone. Finally, I forced myself to turn around. There was nothing. The office was empty. The hallway was empty. The stairwell was empty. Then, almost instantly, the building came back to life. The vents began humming again. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The old walls settled with their familiar creaks. It was as if someone had pressed the mute button and then turned the sound back on. I looked at the clock. 12:18. More than 30 minutes had passed. It felt like only a few minutes. I finished the rest of my shift, but I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. The next morning, I found one of the maintenance technicians and asked if the motion sensor in the stairwell had been acting up. He checked the system log. After a few seconds, he looked up and said, "It only triggered once." What time? 11:47 p.m., the exact moment I'd heard it. I walked away without saying another word. A few days later, I finally told one of the older maintenance workers what had happened. He listened quietly from beginning to end. When I finished, he didn't ask about the sensor. He didn't tell me I was imagining things. Instead, he looked toward the stairwell and said, "It stayed behind you, didn't it?" A chill ran through my entire body. I had never mentioned that part. I asked him how he knew. He was silent for a moment. Then he looked me straight in the eyes. "You're lucky." "Lucky how?" His expression never changed. Most people turn around. Before I could ask him what he meant, someone called his name from down the hall. He simply walked away. I've tried asking him about that conversation several times since. Every single time, he acts like it never happened. I've never believed in haunted houses. Even now, I still look for a logical explanation before I blame something paranormal. But there was one apartment that changed my mind forever. My family didn't move out because we wanted a bigger place. We didn't move because the neighborhood was dangerous. We left because after months of things we couldn't explain, none of us believed we were alone anymore. It didn't start with anything dramatic. A door would open by itself. The kettle would switch on when nobody was in the kitchen. The kind of strange little moments you brush off because there's always a reasonable explanation. That's exactly what we did. Until the night my mom woke up screaming. She wasn't having a nightmare. She swore something had climbed onto the bed. and pinned her down. That was the night everything changed. Because looking back now, I don't think whatever was in that apartment wanted to scare us. I think it wanted us to know it was there. When we first moved into the apartment, nothing seemed unusual. It was a small 2-bedroom place. Nothing fancy, but it felt like a fresh start. The only part of the apartment that ever bothered me was the hallway. I could never explain why. Every time I walked through it, I felt this strange sense of unease, as if someone was quietly watching me from somewhere I couldn't see. I always brushed it off. The first unexplained things were easy to ignore. A bedroom door we'd closed would somehow be standing open later. The kettle would switch itself on even though nobody had gone near the kitchen. Little things, the kind of things you blame on old wiring or faulty hinges. And that's exactly what we did. Then one night, I woke up to my mom shouting from her bedroom. It wasn't a scream. It sounded like someone desperately trying to push another person away. I rushed into her room and found her sitting upright in bed, gripping the blanket so tightly her hands were shaking. She stared at me for a few seconds before quietly saying, "It felt like someone climbed onto the bed and pinned me down." Neither of us wanted to believe it. We convinced ourselves she'd had a nightmare. A few days later, she came home from work looking completely drained. Before she even took off her coat, she looked at me and said, "Every time I unlock that front door, it feels like something is taking every bit of energy out of me." I didn't know how to respond. For the first time, it felt like whatever had happened that night wasn't just a bad dream. Then, a deafening crash exploded from my brother's bedroom. The crash came from my brother's room. My mom and I ran down the hallway and threw the door open. Everything looked normal for about a second. Then the storage boxes, stacked neatly on top of his wardrobe, suddenly slid forward and crashed onto the floor. Before either of us could process what we'd just seen, the CD case beside the television slowly tipped over by itself. Nothing had touched it. Those boxes had been sitting there for months. For the first time, neither of us even tried to explain it. A few weeks later, my mom spent the night at my sister's house. I stayed out with a friend until after midnight. When I got home, I found a message from my brother asking me to tell him which lights were on inside the apartment. I replied that the hallway, the bathroom, and my bedroom lights were all on. His reply came almost instantly. "Don't stay there. Leave. Go to our sister's house." The next morning, he finally told me why. After turning off every light in the apartment, he'd gone to lie down in our mom's room. About 20 minutes later, the hallway light switched itself on. He got up, turned it off, and climbed back into bed. A few moments later, he heard the bathroom pull cord being yanked. Then he looked toward the bedroom doorway. Hovering just above, it was a glowing ball of light. It drifted silently toward the floor and vanished. That was enough. He grabbed his keys and ran. Not long after that, we decided we couldn't live there anymore. We moved out. Months later, after the electricity had already been disconnected, I went back to the apartment with a few friends. The place was completely dark. We sat in the living room with nothing but candlelight. That's when I heard it. A woman crying somewhere down the hallway. It sounded distant, almost like someone begging for help. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then it came again. This time, it was a man's voice, a long, unnatural moan that came from just outside the living room door. My friend heard it too. We looked at each other, got up, and walked straight out of the apartment. Neither of us ever went back. The strangest part happened after we'd already moved out. Whenever my 2-year-old niece visited, she refused to walk down that hallway. She'd stop, point into the darkness, burst into tears, and whisper the same 2 words. The man? She was too young to know anything about what we'd experienced. Whatever we encountered in that apartment, my niece saw it too. Even now, I still can't explain what happened that night. I've gone over it in my head countless times, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe I was still half asleep. Maybe my eyes were adjusting to the darkness. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. I honestly wish that were true, because there's one detail I can't explain. I wasn't the first one to notice it. My cat was. It was sometime between 2 and 3 in the morning when I suddenly woke up for no reason. The room was completely silent. The only light came from the faint glow outside my bedroom window. As I rolled over, I saw my cat sitting at the foot of the bed. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't moving. His ears were pinned back. His body was stiff. His eyes were locked on my bedroom doorway. I quietly called his name. Nothing. Passion. He didn't blink. He didn't even acknowledge that I was awake. Whatever had his attention, it had all of it. That's when I slowly turned toward the doorway to see what my cat had been staring at. For a moment, everything looked completely normal. Then my eyes adjusted to the darkness. Someone was standing there, a tall, human-shaped figure, completely black. No face, no features, just a motionless silhouette watching me from the bedroom doorway. The instant I looked directly at it, it moved. Not like a person walking away. It seemed to glide backward into the darkness of the hallway and disappeared. My heart was pounding. The strange thing was, I wasn't immediately scared. I honestly thought it was my mom. She was staying at my apartment that night, and I assumed she'd quietly come to check on me. Without thinking, I jumped out of bed and hurried into the hallway. Mom? Silence. I checked the hallway. Nothing. I looked into the next room. Empty. No footsteps. No doors closing. Nothing. Trying to calm myself down, I grabbed my phone and sent her a message. Were you just standing outside my room? A minute later, she replied. No, I've been in bed this whole time. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd just woken from a dream. Maybe the darkness had played tricks on my eyes. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. And then I looked back at my cat. He hadn't moved. He was still staring at the exact same doorway. His ears were still pinned back. His body was still frozen. That's when I realized something that terrified me even more than the figure itself. Before I'd seen anything, my cat already had. A few nights later, it happened again. Almost the same time. I woke up, rolled over, and saw my cat sitting exactly where he'd been before, perfectly still, staring at the bedroom doorway. I never looked. I pulled the blanket over my head, closed my eyes, and waited for the sun to come up. That was the last time I ever saw it. Nothing like that has happened since. Life slowly returned to normal. But every now and then, usually sometime in the middle of the night, I'll wake up for no reason. And without even thinking, the first thing I do is look at my cat. Not the doorway, my cat. Because if he's sleeping peacefully, I know everything is fine. But if I ever wake up and find him sitting perfectly still, staring into the darkness, I already know I won't look. Not immediately. Maybe not at all. I've spent a long time trying to convince myself that what I saw wasn't real. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe my eyes played tricks on me. Maybe fear filled in the gaps. I honestly don't know. But one thing has never left my mind. Before I saw anything, my cat was already watching the doorway. He reacted before I ever turned my head. And that's the one part I'll never be able to explain. Because if it had only been me, I could have blamed my imagination. But my cat saw something first. And sometimes, that's the thought that scares me the most.